Hello, it's Stephen here. It's been a while since I've done any sort of live streaming or guides to the night sky, so I thought, why not? It's starting to get a little bit darker now in the evenings. I'm sure you've noticed as we move into August. That's going to accelerate as we get to the solstice. So, in Inverness now, where I'm located, I can actually start to see some stars after 11 p.m. now. I was looking up at Arcturus last night as it happened, and there's a few other things to watch out for. So let's just get on with this short guide then. The first thing I wanted to highlight were the number of planets that are starting to appear, admittedly low in the south. But if you go out about midnight, now everything I'm going to show you here is based on midnight. So remember, the positions of the planets and the stars will change slightly if you go out earlier or later. But if you look towards the east southeast, low on the horizon, about 10 degrees up, which is a fist extended from the horizon, then you may first notice Jupiter, which will be incredibly bright. It's magnitude minus 2.7, I believe. So it will certainly be the brightest planet that you can see naked eye. This is obviously exaggerated. This large sphere here is just showing you the relative brightness. But look out for Jupiter. It will be an unwavering bright point of light. So remember, the stars tend to twinkle, the planets not so much. If we rotate then 45 degrees roughly to the right, further to the south, Saturn will also be up. Much, much dimmer Saturn. It's hovering close to magnitude 0. So it may be worthwhile scanning the horizon with binoculars to find Saturn. Once you've located it in binoculars, it will probably be much obvious to you naked eye. And if we go back to Jupiter and then to the left, around about the same amount of degrees, Mars will be rising. Now, by midnight, it will still be incredibly low, only a few degrees above the horizon. So if you really want to see Mars, and incidentally the lovely Pleiades star cluster, which is close by, then you perhaps want to wait till 1, 2 or 3 a.m., in which case Mars will have proceeded higher and further over to the south. Now, there's quite a good opportunity at the moment to sight Uranus. Uranus, of course, an incredibly distant world, very, very difficult to spot, even with decent astronomical equipment. So there's a good opportunity with Mars sitting close to Uranus at the moment to sight it. And in fact, a follower of my Facebook page, Kevin Williamson, took a really nice image of Mars and Uranus, which you can have a look at if you just go to our recent posts on the feed. So there we go, some planet action starting to emerge, starting to get dark enough. And as we proceed into autumn, these planets are going to get higher because the angle of the ecliptic is going to change. So, what about stargazing in general? Well, you may or may not know that in 5 days' time, we will have the peak of the Perseids meteor shower. Now, the Perseids is actually underway at the moment, but the rates of shooting stars are still comparatively low. But on the 12th, it will be peak. This is the constellation Perseus, the hero. I always think it looks a bit like a giraffe. It is supposed to be a warrior wielding a sword, but the radiant of the Perseids is in the constellation Perseus, which means the debris or the fine dust that lights up as it interacts with the Earth's atmosphere will appear to come from that direction. However, when you're looking for meteors and you're wanting to see shooting stars, you do not need to look at the radiant, remember. The shooting stars will appear to come from all directions. So you don't really need to worry about that, but I'm just letting you know its rough altitude. Unfortunately for this year's Perseids, there will be almost full moon, which is a bit of a shame. So we may only see the very brightest meteors, but I'm going to post a more detailed guide on that later on. Capella, one of the brightest stars in the night sky, and Auriga is also very visible. Also, if we scan back to Jupiter, the constellation Andromeda is above Jupiter, and some of you may know about finding the Andromeda galaxy. So I'm going to zoom in here. The best way to find Andromeda, for me, there are many ways, is to find the Great Square of Pegasus, so the 4 stars that make a distinctive kind of rectilinear shape. And from there we have a kind of curve of bright stars. This is Andromeda, the princess lying prostrate in the night sky. And if we go to the kind of middle star in this line, Merak, I always use that as a guide, and I star hop up 1 star and then the same distance again will take you to the faint, fuzzy presentation of the Andromeda galaxy, previously known, prior to the 1920s, as the Great Andromeda Nebula. We now know that this is not a cloud of dust, but is in fact an external galaxy containing hundreds of billions of suns, just like our own galaxy. And that always blows me away when I think about that when I am observing Andromeda. Of course, a simple pair of binoculars will let you see the glow of that huge, gigantic stellar structure. So there is the Andromeda Nebula. Let me just scan around to see what else there is to see. At the moment, the plough is kind of running on its side, or la casserole. So here is the handle of the plough and the main body. And 1 star, which I mentioned a little bit earlier to look out for, which will be incredibly bright over to the west. So if you look in the direction that the sun has set in after dark, you will see a brilliantly vibrant, clearly orange star. And that is Arcturus, known as the Bear Watcher, because it follows the bear in the night sky. Look at its proximity to the tail of the bear. And of course, Arcturus is a red giant star, which means it has run out of its main stores of hydrogen fuel. It's going through late phase of its evolution. Its outer atmosphere has bloated out and cooled, hence the duller, cooler orange taint. And at some point in the future, of course, it will shed its atmosphere and become a white dwarf. The same fate that awaits our sun in a long time, in another 4 billion years or so. So that is Arcturus, also nice to look out for. The Milky Way is also, of course, on display, but you will need to get a lot of darkness. It's probably still not dark enough to really go Milky Way hunting. If you live in the south of England, or perhaps further south, maybe in the Mediterranean, then it's going to get much darker, and you probably can see the Milky Way more clearly. Up here, it's still not quite dark enough to really appreciate it, but in the months ahead, we're going to be able to see the Milky Way much more clearly. Anyway, I think that is it. I want to keep these little videos short and sweet. So that is a rough overview of what's up at the moment. Some planets low on the horizon, a few constellations like Andromeda, and the brilliant red giant star Arcturus, all worthwhile looking out for. So thank you very much for listening, and clear skies.